something or somebody else to help cope through this stressful period. And what happens is they turn to other coping strategies such as comfort eating or stress eating, drugs, alcohol, addictive behavior, and even what psychologists tell us, lustful behavior. They see it as a means of comfort. And this behavior then becomes a default as a coping mechanism when they're in their adulthood. Okay? So bear in mind all these things as we talk, as we go along. Another theory specifically for men, and that's why it's really important for men who are fathers, and even if you're not fathers yet, inshallah you will be, pay attention, okay? That with boys, if they haven't been shown love from their father, especially hands-on love, there's nothing wrong with hugging your son, there's nothing wrong with kissing your son and telling your son, I love you, whatever age they are, okay? But if they don't get that, what happens in adulthood, this is really scary, what happens in adulthood, they seek out this unmet love that they didn't get from their father through what? I'll let you finish the story. You can figure it out for yourself, okay? Even if they're married, even if they're in a long-term relationship, they still seek out love through other means, and they don't realize what they're doing. They have an unmet need, but they're seeking it through different avenues. This is another theory. Now, look, if this is left unchecked in childhood, it becomes a coping mechanism throughout adulthood as well. Now, bear all this in mind, and now add in fingertip access, okay, our phones, okay? Who doesn't have a smartphone, okay? Everybody has a smartphone now. Fingertip access, okay? Social media, internet, the problem's amplified. Do you know how many people watch porn? Percentage-wise? Adults? Loads. Give me a number, give me a metric. Percentage. 50%. It's just under 60. But if let's just round it up to 50. That's 1 in 2 who are sat here right now. Inshallah, not the case. But think about it. Do you know how many children watch it regularly? 40%. Understand? So it's the instant access is not necessarily a good thing. When lockdown first happened, the first lockdown, one particular organization that does this, their subscriptions went up by 75% because there's lots of reasons, coping mechanism, boredom, whatever. But what does it do? Research concludes that, look, it creates a false impression of what a normal body is. What a normal body is. A normal body is a healthy body. That's it. Okay? It creates a complete false impression what intimacy is about, what sexual behavior is about. It's supposed to be intimacy, sohbah, jima, is supposed to be a mutual, satisfying expression of one's love for their spouse. Mutual, not one way. Okay? What it does, if your lifelong partner, wife, husband finds out that what do you think that would do to them? It would destroy them. It breaks trusts. Did you know research has shown that people who do constantly or repeatedly watch inappropriate material, they're actually not satisfied as much during intimacy? They don't feel satisfied. Couples actually have less intimacy. They're not as sexually active as they were. Okay. And then for the one who's watching it, it creates unrealistic expectations. And there's a man called John Gottman, who's an international guru when it comes to relationships. So he has this institute in America called the Gottman Institute. He can put any couple in a room, watch them for 1 hour doing a task, and he can predict whether they're going to get divorced or not. He has a 90% hit rate. He's been doing this for decades. His words, word for word, I'll say it. Use of pornography by one partner leads the couple to have far less intimacy, yani jima, okay, sohbah, lovemaking, and ultimately reduces relationship satisfaction. We are led to unconditionally, like no questions here, unconditionally conclude that for many reasons pornography poses a serious threat to couple intimacy and relationship harmony. So what happens at a biological level when we experience pleasure with whatever it is, even bar of chocolate, okay? Certain hormones are released in the brain that result in comfort, pleasure, excitement, and so forth, okay? That feeling is highly addictive. It's highly addictive. In fact, even with ibadah, okay, you can miss the boat. People say, you know what? I love worshiping Allah because it makes me feel good. That's not why you worship Allah. Do you understand? That's not why you worship Allah. That's a bonus, but that's not why you do it. And someone came to Hassan al-Basri, I'm sure it was him, he said, I don't get any enjoyment in my ibadat. And Hassan al-Basri said, well, maybe you're worshipping ibadah and you're not worshipping Allah. So that feeling is highly addictive. And what happens is, because you get that kick, okay, you want it again. Okay, so imagine this scenario. Someone's talking about drugs. I'm sure they'll talk about it. But imagine the first time someone has a split. I'm acting like I've never done it. I'm acting like I know how to. I've never done it. I promise, right? But someone has a split. The first time they do it, that dopamine, which is your happy hormone, goes sky high, right? Sky high. Second time they do it, it doesn't go as high. So what do? They take more. Third time doesn't go as high as the second time. So what do? They take more. And you can see where the cycle goes. It's a vicious cycle, addictive behavior. Okay, then what happens is, like people who use cocaine, they scan their brains at month 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, by month 4, the part of the brain that deals with self-control disappears. You lose your self-control. And so you're out of control because you still want that kick. So you do it over and over. It starts with 1, 2, 3. You can see where it goes, especially with viewing inappropriate material. It starts with small stuff and then it's just continuous. Okay, you see where this is going, right? Now, specifically with the issues that we're discussing, remember, it starts with a look. Then it becomes a what? A thought, a notion. Then it becomes a what? An intention. Then it becomes a what? An act. And it's a very famous tradition in our Islamic tradition that some of the ulama have said when a man becomes aroused, 2/3 of his intellect disappears. 2/3 of his intellect disappears. I'll let you finish. I can't say what I want to say because of the sanctity of the masjid, but you can work it out for yourself. Look, there are women, and we should have ultra adult conversations about this. There are women in our community who loathe their husbands. They despise their husbands because they just see them as a sex toy. That's it. The only time the words "I love you" come out of the husband's mouth is during intimacy. Otherwise, throughout the day and throughout the years, there's no intimacy, there's no show of love, there's no connection, there's no emotion, there's no nothing. And they feel like, well, you're just using me for this. There are women who just detest nighttime because their husbands force them to do things that they don't want to do because their husbands are imitating the bakwas that they're watching over and over again because they think that's normal and they completely despise it. Okay, and so many times where I've heard it, women say, my husband spends more time looking at everybody else than me. It's heartbreaking. It destroys their soul. The anxiety that they have about, am I not good enough? What's wrong with me? That sort of, it destroys them. Okay, now who here does not know somebody who's had to go through the pain of knowing that their lifelong partner, their husband or their wife, has had an affair? It's like we all know somebody now. Understand? And usually, like they've studied this, social scientists, 40% of affairs is with someone who's a friend. 30% is with a work colleague. And they all say, I would never have imagined having an affair with somebody like this. I didn't even fancy her when we first met. You understand? So, but it starts with this. But remember, every prohibition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is to safeguard something else. Okay, there's lots of ulama here, they'll tell you this, that every prohibition Allah has given us is to safeguard something else. Why is shirk prohibited? It's to safeguard tawheed. Why is stealing prohibited? It's to safeguard property. Why is murder prohibited? It's to safeguard life. Why is zina prohibited? It's to safeguard lineage. It's to safeguard the family unit. You understand? There's a long-term goal here when Allah sets prohibitions. Now I could go on and on, but shut up. I'm gonna stop. But look, what I'm trying to say is that you can see where I'm going with this. But this is a fact that we just forgot. COVID just, it made us remember. It reinforced the concept that no one knows how long they've got left on this planet. You have no idea when our time is up. No idea whatsoever. Okay? But what we do know is that one day our time is up. And there's another world there, and it's more real than here. That's when we really wake up, where things will be more tangible. And it's everlasting, it doesn't stop. Okay? And the only salvation in reaching Allah is with a sound heart. That's it. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Your wealth, your children will be of no benefit except the one who comes with Allah with a qalbun salim. إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. To the effect, in your body there's a piece of flesh. If it's purified, the rest of the body's pure. If it's ruined, the rest of the body's ruined. It's the heart, okay? And we discussed this in December when we talked about Hazrat Rahimahullah, about the benefits that I had with him, waking you up and connecting you to Allah, letting love be your driver when you're on your journey to Allah. And the other thing was purification before you have that great meeting with Allah. Now the path of purification, according to my Hazrat Rahimahullah, our Hazrat Rahimahullah, is what he said was, after yaqeen, after certainty of faith sets in you, there's only two things you need to do. Number one, whatever your maker's told you to do it. And whatever your maker's told you not to do, don't do it. Because there's benefit in both worlds, okay? Now, committing sin, okay, any sin, it obliterates your path to God, to Allah. It's one of the biggest blockers going to Allah. And some ulama, they said that it's like somebody saying, I'm going to get close to Allah through nafal, but I'm not going to do my fard. What would you say of that person? You're mad. You understand? And that's what sins are like, is that it just obliterates your deeds completely. And so if some of us, if we're wondering, why am I doing so many good things, but I'm not getting anywhere? It could be because we're engrossed in so much wrong, okay? Now, one of the greatest neglected edicts that Allah's given us is controlling of one's gaze. Maulana Shaykh Rahimahullah used to say that out of a thousand, only one is saved. That was in his time, okay? Out of 1,000, only one is saved, okay? It's one of the most biggest neglected problems, and it's a spiritual disease, okay? Remember, it starts with a look, then a thought, then intention, then action. Now read the verses of Surah Nur, the chapter of light, where Allah tells the believing men and women to lower their gaze because it's purer for them. It's purer for them. This is Allah talking, your maker. Now look, what I'm trying to say is, look, control your gaze, brothers and sisters who are listening. Honest, there's no hard and fast rules about this. You have to control it. You have to exercise enormous willpower and courage and do it. Maulana Masihullah Khan Sahib Rahimullah, who is the Khalifa of Ashrafia, Maulana Ashrafia Rahimullah, used to say, any emotion you get is involuntary. You have no control over it. Don't worry about it. But the capacity to act or not do something is in your volition. It's up to you. It's a choice. Okay? So you have the capacity to act or not act. That's when the willpower and the courage needs to come in. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said the first glance is waived, because it's involuntary. There was a brother, he asked the Shaykh, what if the first glance is? That doesn't count. It's the second one which is blameworthy, which is the prolonged one, okay? Now, the one who does this, the one who lowers the gaze, okay, and has what's called a tranquil eye, what Allah does, what's the gift according to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ? Someone knows, what does Allah give them in return? Sweetness of Iman. That's the ultimate goal of a believer. That's how you achieve a sound heart, a tranquil heart. It's a win-win situation. It's not hard to do, okay? And it's free. So how do we get there? How do we get to that tranquil eye and tranquil heart? We talked about this yesterday, in the Majlis. You have to take the way of prophecy. You have to take the way of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Look, the first step is increasing your certainty, your yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Core beliefs like, look, you were made by a being with infinite intelligence. He loved you enough to give you life. Hazrat used to say this a lot, that the whole notion of existence, that you're alive, is the biggest ni'mah that a human being can have. Okay? And it's about being aware of that. Your very existence, your heartbeat, your breathing, your thought processes as you're listening to this, everything, your entire existence is dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have a perfect maker who made you, and therefore you owe Allah everything. You understand? You owe Allah your everything. And the eye that He gifted you and I with, what did He give it us for? Our ulama say He gave it to us so that you can obviously navigate through life, but more so He gave it to you so that you can look at the heavens and the earth and creation and marvel at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's majesty. And so your yaqeen increases. He gave you these eyes so you could read the accounts of the traditions of the Prophet ﷺ, so you could fall in love with the Habib ﷺ. He gave you these eyes to read the accounts of the Salaf so you could be inspired. He gave you these eyes so that you could look at people with the eye of rahmah and help somebody who's in need. And ultimately, Imam Ghazali said He gave you this eye that one day you're going to be able to gaze at your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ain't a small thing. And if you want that to happen, you have to protect it here. You understand? Some of the ulama, they say, if you want to see the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in your dream, your eyes can't be just looking here and there. It ain't going to happen. You understand? It's not going to happen. Shaykh Zakaria, when people used to come to him and say, I'm struggling to memorize the Quran, he'd ask them, how you doing with this? Because he would say it weakens the memory. It weakens. There's a story of a Hafidh al-Quran. When he was a young boy studying, he was looking at something that he shouldn't be looking at. And the Shaykh said to him, don't look at that. He said, what's the problem? It's nothing. And the Shaykh said, you're going to see the effects of this one day. 20 years passed. He said, I remember this conversation for my whole adulthood. He was a Hafidh al-Quran. 20 years passed. He said, I woke up one day randomly, I forgot the whole Quran. This isn't a small matter. Okay, now look, when yaqeen sets in, if you don't have an identity, you don't know how to behave. Okay? But for an identity to kick in, you have to have certainty in something. When you have certainty and yaqeen in something, automatically your brain locks into an identity. What's our identity? It's Muhammadi. We are from the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That identity of being a Muhammadi kicks in. When that kicks in, you know how to behave. And ultimately, your model is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so then you ask yourself, what would the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam do in this situation? If you let that be your muraqabah, you're not going to get yourself into much trouble with Allah. Where would his hands reach out? Where would his feet go towards? Where would his eyes go? How would he respond? What would he choose to say? If you make that your entire being, you'll be fine, inshallah. You see, the thing about, in terms of this topic, the Prophet ﷺ, he saw everybody for their humanity. Understand that. Before everything else, he saw them for their humanity. You all have heard the story of the young man who came to the Prophet. Can you imagine someone coming into the majlis and saying to Shaykh, Shaykh, give me permission to do zina? What would we all do? We'll take him outside and deal with him. Like, what are you doing? The Prophet ﷺ left him and he explained to him, he went through the whole list of female relatives, mother, sister, auntie, and the rest. And he's asked him, would you like that to happen to your mother or your sister or your auntie or this or that? And he made the young impressionable man understand the concept of consequences and adab and humanity. And he understood. And he was teaching the concepts of humanity that don't view people as a sexual object. That's what he was teaching before anything else. And this is our standard. So remember your blameworthy soul, which is known as your nafs. And some scholars, they actually advise, give your nafs a name, like donkey. Okay, your blameworthy soul, give it a name. Okay, so that it's blameworthy. You can't eliminate it. It's with you until you die. But what you can do is subdue it. Al-kayyisu man dana nafsa wa amila lima ba'da al-maut. Hazrat Rahman used to say this all the time. This was something that was repeatedly out of his mouth. The intelligent one. This is a prophetic definition of intelligence. It's not doctor who's intelligent. Al-kayyisu man dana nafsa. The one who subdues his nafs. How do you subdue your nafs? The ulama, they say, fast. Especially if you have a problem with this. Fast or eat less. Imagine your nafs as a beast. If you want to weaken the beast, you starve it. It doesn't have as much power to do what it's good at. So fast or at least eat less. And then وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. And then the ulama say, in meaning of this hadith, is that impose upon yourself worship. And that for the beast, for the nafs, is a burden. It doesn't like it. And what happens is your nafs gets subdued and your soul rises. And proof of it is Ramadan. When you fast in Ramadan, you eat less, or you should eat less. Because studies show that the Muslim's weight goes up. You eat less, okay? And your ibadah goes, like in fifth gear, isn't it? I don't like using this term in a masjid, but your soul is dancing. Your soul's alive. Okay, that's what happens, okay? And that's the two things that you do. But the third thing you do is you keep yourself busy, so busy with beneficial things, beneficial for this world and the next, beneficial for you and the people around you. So you have no time for nonsense. You keep yourself ridiculously busy. Look, if you don't truly value your life, if you don't truly value what we've been given by Allah, if you don't truly value the capability that Allah has given a human being to achieve what they can achieve, you then have what's called holes in your life. You lose your sense of purpose. And when you have that, you have voids and you have holes. And what do? We don't realize we do it. We fill these holes with rubbish. We fill it with drugs, alcohol, addictive behavior, pornography, addiction to these devices and internet and whatnot, and living a life that we weren't designed to live, just to get that quick buzz, okay? We sabotage our own lives and we become our worst enemies. And the enemy is actually from within, it's our nafs. Now, it's really important that you do something meaningful with your life and commit to it with a sense of purpose, a higher purpose that's bigger than yourself, okay? A higher purpose, because without purpose, you walk around in circles. And I know some of you here and some of you listening, I know some of you might get comfort in waking up late, having pizza for your breakfast, getting on the sofa, lying down, playing PlayStation or Xbox for hours on end, or watching nonsense or whatever you watch. And I know I'm getting fat all day, right? I know you get some pleasure from that. But just think about this. Your life would be so much more richer and meaningful if you did something worthwhile, if you did something and took it on as a goal. And when you achieve that goal, you'll have a boost of confidence and motivation to do more. Okay, ask yourself a couple of questions. What does your family need? What does your street need? What does your community need? What does the world need? What can I give to this world? There are so many people out there who are in need.
भाई जिन लोगों की असर की नमाज बाकी है वो ऊपर जमात हो रही है, ऊपर चले जाओ, क्योंकि बाज़ लोग वो रोज़ाना 7:15 होती है ना, तो 7:15 समझ कर अभी आए। तो जिनकी असर की नमाज बाकी है, ऊपर जमात हो रही है, ऊपर चले जाओ।
Jazakallah khair. So just think about what you can bring goodness to the world around you with a purpose. Okay, think about your career, and I don't mean career in reference to money. I mean career in how you can bring benefit to the world around you. That should be your career. The focus of your career should only be, what can I bring benefit to the world around you? What about your own personal growth and becoming the best that you can be? What about your health and focusing on that? What about your fitness? What about your mental state? What about trying to reach mastery in all these things? What about committing, for those that haven't, committing memorizing the Quran? There was a boy in the first lockdown in our community. In the first lockdown, he said, I had bags of time. I was bored. I didn't know what to do. So I just picked up the Quran. In 9 months, he became a Hafiz of the Quran. In the first lockdown, there was a young girl, I think she was only about 11, 12, in a few months she did it. There was a boy, one of the, this was a few years ago, and he graduated from Darunberry, and he wasn't a Hafiz of the Quran, so he asked Hazrat I'm going to be a Hafiz, can you listen to my sabak? So Hazrat said to him, yeah, I'll listen to every day. One condition. He said, what? He goes, learn 1 quarter a day. Right? In 90 days he did it. You understand? The point is that you just do something. What about learning Arabic? How long are you going to cut yourself off from the language of the Quran and the language of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Your deen is restricted without it. Okay? Not in the absolute sense, but to a degree it is. What about learning your deen more deeply than just watching a few YouTube clips or reading a few books here and there? What about committing to classes more long term? What about taking the path of suluk, putting your hand in the hand of a shaykh and really trying to figure out this journey with Allah? What about taking on da'wah or tabligh and bringing benefit to people's lives who are distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brothers and sisters? What about joining an initiative that already exists that brings benefit to people? These are things essentially that will define you, and do it properly. Don't dabble in these things, because you'll never be happy. Dabblers aren't happy. People who aren't happy, they go from one thing to another, they're never happy. So do it properly, and do it with a sense of purpose. And don't settle for mediocre. Aim high in your deen, in your dunya. Okay, Allah wants goodness for you. He wants you to prosper. He wants you to have goodness in this world and the next world. Now, specifically, my friends, for this topic, our Hazrat Rahimullah used to advise how to control. He used to say, just simply look down. There's no hard and fast rules. If that doesn't work, look to your left-hand side and say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. If that doesn't work, then just simply close your eyes. Just close them. And when the more you do it, it becomes habit. And then he would say, then do a muraqabah, which is being vigilant, that when you're walking, you're looking down, just remember one day you're going to be 9 feet under. And you're going to get asked everything about whatever gift Allah gave you. One of this is a gift. This is a gift. You're going to get asked. And do that, and inshallah you'll find benefit. Another thing he used to say is often read Rabbana atina fi dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar repeatedly. One of the benefits of that is actually it helps you lower your gaze. Now, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he used to have a student called Rabi'i, and he used to walk the streets of Medina, and people used to think he was blind. And when he came to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu's door, he knocked on his door, his family came and said to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu that your blind friend is here. That's what they said, your blind friend is here. So Ibn Abbas, he didn't tell anybody that he wasn't blind. He used to greet him smiling, and he used to say to him often, he say, "Law ra'aka Rasulullahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam la habbak." That if the Prophet ﷺ was to see you, he would have loved you. Now, no wonder our Hazrat was loved by the Rasul ﷺ. And he was loved by the Prophet ﷺ. One of the brothers had a dream of the Rasul ﷺ when him and his brother Rahimullah was alive. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, 2 brothers, they're my favorite brothers on the planet. Can you imagine that? just the Prophet ﷺ knowing your name. Can you imagine that? And he said, Yusuf and Abdul. And so if anybody who there's people here who have traveled with Hazrat, and they'll tell you that here, abroad, in Safar, he was the same. He used to walk with his head down, wherever he was. Allah grant us that. You can't get this from books. brothers. You have to spend time with people. Now, look, our ultimate, I'm going to finish with this, inshallah, because there's other speakers. Look, the ultimate element to assist you in this is taqwa. It's not my place to talk about taqwa. This is for the ulama, and I'm not a taqi. I'm still on this journey like you. I'm learning. Okay, but it's based on two things. Put Allah first. Firstly, put Allah first in your life. Okay, and the stuff that we've talked about in terms of doing what He's told you to do, staying away from what. And then the second thing is discipline. Discipline has negative connotations, but discipline is everything. If you want to achieve success in anything in life, it's all about discipline. Your character, who you are, is defined by your habits. Your habits is defined by your discipline. If you have good habits, if you have good character, it's because of good habits. You have good habits because of good discipline, and the opposite applies as well. Now listen to a story in terms of this concept of taqwa, of God consciousness. That it's in the Ihya by Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah. There was a person called Sulaiman ibn Yasir, and he was on his way to Hajj, and he stopped off at Abwa. And at Abwa there was two. It was him and his friend, and they were hungry. So one of them said, "I want to get some food." So the other one went to get some food. In those days, in the desert, there's Bedouin tribes. Sulaiman ibn Yasir was known for his beauty. He was a very handsome man. And this Bedouin woman saw him, and she was like, wow, this guy's really handsome. So she went to him, and she said to him, and Sulaiman says, when I looked at her, she was like the full moon. She was a beautiful woman. And she said to him, satisfy me, right? And he innocence, he said, you hungry? Wait here. My friend's gone to get. She said, no. I want something that only a man can give me, right? So he then puts his hands like this, and he's crying. She's looking at you, so we understand. He's like, what a weirdo. she goes. His friend comes back. You see that he's crying. So what happened? He said, I just missed my kids. He said, no, we've only been gone for 2 days. What's happened? And he explained. His friend started crying. He said, why are you crying? He said, if that was me, I don't think I would have done what you did. Then they went to Hajj, and in Mina, he fell asleep. He had a dream, and he saw a beautiful man. He said, who are you? He said, I'm Yusuf. He said, Yusuf alayhi salam? He said, yes. He said, how amazing is your story with Zuleika? And Yusuf alayhi salam said, how amazing was your story at Abwa? Dhikrun fi dunya wal akhirah, until the end of time. This is written in the pages of our tradition. You understand? Allah honors you in this world. One of the seven in the shade, under the shade of the Arsh of Allah, is that quality of Yusuf alayhi salam. It's a win-win situation. Now look, there's sisters who are listening as well. For our dear sisters, on behalf of men, sorry, we're stupid. Okay, men are stupid. Okay, generally we are. Illa masha'Allah. But look, brothers, listen to this for the sake of your sisters. If this eye just looks here and there, okay, and you're addicted to this inappropriate material, you're setting this as a standard for your wives, and it's creating this massive sense of lack of self-security and self-worth and anxiety, okay? And it's not normal, okay? It's not normal. Look, it's impossible to look stunningly beautiful all the time. It's impossible, okay? Beauty, Allah's created every human being inherently beautiful. Inherently beautiful. As long as you're healthy, inshallah, you're beautiful, okay? Allah's made that. And if you can't see it, you have a problem with Allah's creation, okay? So brothers, remember this, okay? Don't do this to your women. And women folk, the sisters who are listening, you don't need to validate yourself by men, okay? You validate yourself from within. You validate yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And your standard, like we're talking about, is the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what do our ulama say? Especially for our women folk, your standard are the Sahabiyat, Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, the children of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and especially who? Fatima radiallahu anha. You know, when she was in her illness where she passed away, before she passed away, she said to her family, she said, you know the kafan, it's quite tight, isn't it? You can see the contours of your body. What she said to her friends and family was that when I die, because in those days it was just kafan and they carry you, like they do in Saudi right now, they do in Muslim countries. There's no coffin. But what she said, I'm worried about the contours of my body being seen. So put a box so that nobody can see me. That's the standard. Fatima radiallahu anha is the standard, that you want to go for. And last thing I want to say is, of brothers and sisters, look after yourselves. What do I mean by that? You're the only person that's halal for your wife to look at, and vice versa. Look after yourself. Don't be like that guy or that girl where the only time you look beautiful is when it was your wedding and when you go to everybody else's wedding. That's the only time you look beautiful. Don't be that person. Okay? Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, so look after yourself, eat well, exercise, look after your mental health, and Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu and Rabi'ah, they were both known that every night they would beautify themselves for their spouse. They would beautify themselves. They'd go to their spouse and ask them, Alaka haja? You understand? They would look after themselves and do that. Otherwise, most of us, apart from our wedding day, the rest of the time we look like Shrek. And it's not a nice thing to look at. Understand? Look after yourself. When COVID happened, Shaykh, I did this thing where, okay, there's got to be benefits. There has to be benefits. Or as dark, period as it was, and it still is. It's still quite bad. What are the benefits? And one of the benefits was, alhamdulillah, no more weddings. So don't invite me, okay? I'll come to the nikah in the masjid, but I ain't doing this. We'll stop there, inshallah. If I said something inappropriate in the masjid, I apologize. But brothers, do take this seriously, because it's one of the biggest blockers. You can't think about having qurb with Allah. You can't think about having khushu and khudur in your salah or your dhikr if you're not controlling this. We'll stop there, inshallah. Some more great ulama have come. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Jazakallah. Dr. Sahab, mashallah, was mentioning nazar-e-bad. حضرت مولانا ہاشم صاحب کی بہت اچھی کتاب ہے بد نظری اور اس کا علاج. اس کو خریدنا چاہیے, پڑھنا چاہیے. بہت شروع میں حضرت نے لکھی تھی, اور حضرت شیخ رحمۃ اللہ علیہ بھی جہاں تک مجھے یاد پڑتا ہے بہت خوشی ہوئی تھی اس کتاب کے لکھنے سے. تو اس کو آپ خریدیں, اس کا مطالعہ کریں, بہت فائدہ ہوگا. میں بھی پڑھنے کے زمانے میں اس کو پڑھا تھا, ایک دفعے دو دفعے, پھر مولانا صاحب نے اس میں کچھ اضافہ بھی کیا, اچھے اچھے قصے بھی اس میں لکھے, اس میں سب حدیثیں بھی لکھی ہیں. لعن اللہ الناظر والمنظور الیہ, اللہ کی لعنت جاتی ہے اس پر جو ایسی غلط چیزیں دیکھتا ہے اور اس پر بھی جس کو دیکھا جاتا ہے. تو نظر کی حفاظت تو بہت ضروری ہے. النظر سہم مسموم من سہام ابلیس, نظر تو ابلیس کے زہریلے پوائزنس تیروں میں سے ایک تیر ہے. تمہارے دل کو پوائزن کر دیتا ہے ابلیس اس نظر کی ذریعہ. اور اس زمانے میں یہ نظر بد جو ہے بہت خطا کرتی ہے. حضرت مولانا قاری امیر احمد صاحب, حضرت شیخ رحمۃ اللہ علیہ کے خلیفہ, یہاں تشریف لائے تھے, زکریا مسجد میں بیان کیا تھا پرانی. انہوں نے کہا اس زمانے میں 3 گناہ بہت عام ہیں: بدگمانی, بد زبانی اور بد نظری. بدگمانی, دوسروں کے بارے میں برے خیالات, اور جب بدگمانی ہوتی ہے تو بد زبانی ہوتی ہے, کیونکہ بات دوسرے کے بارے میں بدگمانی, which is going to result in بد زبانی. You're going to do غیبت, slander, accuse, تہمت. And number 3, he said بد نظری. That بد نظری عوام تو عوام, حضرت شیخ used to say, عوام تو عوام, خواص بھی اس میں مبتلا ہے. Let alone عوام, general public, even the ulama and the khawas are also مبتلا in this. May Allah protect us. تو اس لیے نظر کی حفاظت بہت ضروری ہے, بہت ضروری ہے, بہت ضروری ہے. اپنی حفاظت کرو, غلط سلط چیزیں مت دیکھو, اور نظر نیچی کر لو, جھکا لو, دوسری طرف دیکھ لو. حکیم اختر صاحب رحمۃ اللہ علیہ یہاں تشریف لاتے تھے تو اکثر ان کا بیان اسی ٹاپک پر ہوتا تھا, نگاہ کی حفاظت. نگاہ کی حفاظت, یہ نگاہ جو ہے نا, اس سے ہم جو دیکھتے ہیں وہ سیدھا کہاں اترتا ہے؟ دل میں. نگاہ کی مثال ایسی ہے جیسے فنل, وہ تیل ڈالنے کی کپی ہوتی ہے نا, تو اس کا اوپر سے منہ بڑا ہوتا ہے اور نیچے لمبی ڈنڈی ہوتی ہے, تو اس میں تیل ڈالتے ہیں تو چھوٹی بوتل میں تیل جاتا ہے. بس یہ آنکھ اور کان, یہ دونوں فنل کی طرح سے ہیں. جو کچھ آنکھ دیکھتی ہے, جو کچھ کان سنتا ہے, وہ سیدھا دل میں اترتا ہے. تو آپ کا دل وہی بنے گا جو آپ آنکھ سے دیکھیں گے اور جو کان سے سنیں گے. اس لیے آنکھ کا بھی غلط استعمال مت کرو, کان کا بھی غلط استعمال کرو, تاکہ غلط چیز تمہارے دل میں جائے ہی نہ, دل تمہارا محفوظ رہے. اس لیے حضرت مولانا ہمارے ڈاکٹر زکریا گوگا صاحب نے بیان کیا. ماشاءاللہ ڈاکٹر صاحب جی پی ہیں مانچسٹر میں, ہمارے دوست ہیں, دارالعلوم آیا کرتے تھے فری ٹائم میں حضرت کے پاس, اور حضرت کو بھی ان سے بہت انسیت تھی, اور حضرت بھی ان پر اچھی توجہ کرتے تھے. ماشاءاللہ ان کو بہت چیزیں یاد ہیں حضرت کی. کہہ رہے تھے اپنے نفس کو نام دینا چاہیے, تو مجھے حضرت رحمۃ اللہ علیہ کی بات آئی. حضرت رحمۃ اللہ علیہ ایک بیان میں فرماتے ہیں کہ یہ نفس جو ہے نا, یہ ہمارا جسم جو ہے نا, جسم یہ بھاڑے کا ٹٹو ہے, یعنی یہ رینٹڈ ڈونکی ہے. ڈونکی کو پہلے زمانے میں رینٹ پر لیتے تھے, جیسے ہم گاڑیوں کو رینٹ پر لیتے ہیں, تو پھر اس کو برابر یوز کرتے تھے, اس کی ٹھوس نکال دیتے تھے ڈونکی کی, جیسے ہم گاڑیوں کی ٹھوس نکال دیتے ہیں. تو وہ کہتے ہیں یہ ہماری باڈی جو ہے نا, یہ بھاڑے کا ٹٹو ہے, اسے خوب کام لو, بہت عبادت کرو, بہت اس کو جگائے بھی رکھو, بزی رکھو, بزی رکھو, بزی رکھو, تاکہ اس کو الٹی سیدھی چیزیں سوجے ہی نہیں اس کو. اللہ ہماری ہمارے جوان نسلوں کی حفاظت فرمائے.